Welcome back to the Two Alphas Talk. Today we're going to talk to you about a topic that is hitting the nation, it's nationwide. A lot of people have paying attention to it, and other people are not paying, may not understand it. But we'll try to give you a little bit of information and go into it a little bit. The topic today is the states nullifying federal gun control laws and how we're going to go about that. What do we, as citizens of this country, what do we perceive as that's going to be in the future? And do you agree or disagree with it?
All right. So, yeah, I mean that's something that's pretty. I mean, it's great that the states are actually doing that to stop the federal government from enforcing gun laws. And so far, I think it was 14 or 17 states or something like that that has it.
Well,
Yeah,
it's
it's growing pretty
definitely growing.
fast. And so what they're doing is preparing for um, because what's happening? Basically, the background is that the president we have in office now is utilizing the crime statistics of each of the states in order to push gun control. And so what he's trying to do is say that Chicago, New York, California, if they have another school shooting or if the murder rate is twice the statistics of their last murder rate, let's say they got 300 people killed last year and now they got 600. So they're trying to use those
Mm-hmm.
statistics as a means to use and enforce gun control on the average citizen. Now, they're not actually looking at the crime rates that the criminals are the ones who are enforcing the gun laws. And we just got out of COVID for the last 2 years. So there's a spike in every metropolitan city with crime right now, you know? Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Right. Well, the key to it also is we're talking about gun control, and gun control is only to control guns from law-abiding citizens. People who do crime don't go standing and get a CCW or a weapons carry license. They don't do that. They steal guns. They take guns from each other. They find guns in people's cars, unsecured, and things like that. So when you talk about gun control, it's not going to reduce crime. It reduces the ability for an individual to defend themselves because either you find in more restrictions how to own a gun, or if we get to a place where it's total confiscation, now you're sharpening a stick or running around with a knife in your
Right.
pocket to defend
And
yourself.
and it's actually pretty crazy. So let's go ahead and play a video that shows what the states nullify federal gun control law is and how many states we have. And let's put that up real quick.
Mm-hmm.
And run
Governor
this.
Doug Ducey signed a gun control nullification bill into law. Montana and West Virginia's legislatures have each approved bills that are now awaiting signature or veto from their governors. The Arkansas Senate and the Missouri and South Carolina Houses have each passed such bills, and committees in Texas, Alabama, and New Hampshire have bills that are moving forward in their state legislatures, and similar bills have been introduced in Florida, North Carolina, Georgia, Minnesota, Ohio, Nebraska, Iowa, and Louisiana.
James Madison in Federalist 46. He told us what needs to be done by individuals, cities, and states to defeat federal programs without relying on the federal government to limit itself. He said specifically a refusal to cooperate with officers of the Union. This is how you defeat the feds, whether it's an unconstitutional act or if you just don't like the policy.
Michael
So even the Constitution was prepared for this because they knew this was coming down the pipe, and yeah.
Right.
So what's the good thing about it is even the state of Georgia has laws in the books for this. Hopefully, to pass this session that's coming up.
Mm-hmm.
And
Right.
go ahead.
Well, when you look at it, it's we have to understand the bigger picture, because when you think of crime, you think of somebody who's doing something against another person. But what does gun control do?
Mm-hmm.
Follow me? If you take all the guns away from everybody, like say if it's possible in a alternate universe to just no guns whatsoever. So next 10 years, there's a conversation goes on and there's no guns at all. What happens then? Now you have people strong arming, because criminals are still going to be criminals, whether they smuggle in guns from other places or they just get people who are willing to hurt other people with their hands, knives, bats, chains, whatever it is. You're going to push it into that. Criminals are still going to be
criminals are still.
That I know. I just rewrapped the last statement that I made. It made it sound pretty much the same thing. But to me, that's the bottom line. It's like I've been around for a long time, and I've seen that gun control. I lived in a state where it was restrictive, and then it got even worse and more restrictive. And I never saw the crime rate go down, but I saw more victims.
Right.
See, so there was never, there's never balancing. You make more restrictive gun rates. You go to 10-round magazines, state of Maryland. You go to 10-round magazines, and you still have crime. You still have a high murder rate, because you have people, and it's a social, but you have people who feel disadvantaged or may even be disadvantaged, and then they go out and do things. But the majority of the time, you saw people, young people from well-to-do families involved in criminal activity. So what was the excuse? Then you have a person that's really in a disadvantage, somebody that goes through, hunger at night and no stable place to stay. That's not understanding, but I do recognize where they're coming from. So they're in a desperate state, and there's nobody that's standing there.
So they're gonna take matter.
Give them a blanket,
They're going back to the
whatever,
caveman.
Yeah. There you go.
Yeah.
Exactly. And that's what same thing would happen if you take if there was every firearm that was ever devised in the United States was just taken away. You're still gonna have those people who feel that they need to rob and steal. You see it here in Atlanta. Most of those robberies at the malls, they're kids who just want the latest and the greatest, and they don't want to pay for it. So they're going in and they're snatching all the clothes off a rack. They're going in, they got hammers, and they're smashing the jewelry stores, and they're snatching and grabbing. There's one dude at the front door with a gun, but they're not being violent
individual. They
towards
just want the stuff
because they just want the merchandise. And the other thing is, some of these people are smart enough to understand that the employees are told to let it go.
It's not worth
It's not worth losing not to engage. You remember the guy got fired from Walmart because he stopped a shoplifter, and the shoplifter damn near beat his ass. But he stopped. He slowed the dude down long enough for other people to get in. They fired the dude. I think it was a Home Depot.
But
and then they brought him back when everybody got offended because he's a hero. Blah 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 blah. But still, they don't want you. They got insurance. The big corporations got insurance. They'll pay. They'll write it off.
So state of Missouri they have this law too, but it's very restrictive on some things. But the thing about it is, Missouri, their sheriff's department is actually going against it, and it's a lot of other police chiefs and sheriff's departments in each state that has this law are not in agreement with it. So let's go ahead and play that video from Missouri, and let's take a look at that.
States' law enforcement groups like the sheriff's associations in Montana, Wyoming, and Missouri have worked to prevent these laws from passing, or to change language in the bills to render them effectively useless. Bolden says police departments want to continue enforcing federal law because it's lucrative.
In Missouri, one of the biggest reasons that Sheriff's Association is against it is they want to be able to use federal gun charges as leverage for marijuana violations or other drug war issues. And so if you get caught by cops and you've got a gun, they're going to say, turn over your friends or you're going to get an extra 5 or an extra 2 or an extra 10 years under a federal gun charge. And they want to be able to continue that. They get all kinds of funding for the joint task forces through the Department of Homeland Security grant, the Edward Byrne Justice Assistance Grant. They get civil asset forfeiture. I think that is probably getting in the way. I don't think they'll admit that like they're getting a bunch of loot to do this federal enforcement for them, but they certainly are.
A lot of
Bolden
states are
said-
not agreeing with it. A lot of police departments, and we see evidence of that while we watch in Canada. You know, they.
Well, before we get to that part, just think about that last clip. It's going to be a mixed bag because you got smaller agencies that are going to uphold to it because they need the federal dollars. Then you have larger agencies that I've seen, and we talked about earlier with our research, I've seen some of these larger agencies straight up say, you know what, I'm done. Forget the federal money. We don't want it at all. We're not enforcing those laws and we're done. But then you have, like I said, you have agencies with, say, less than 200-man agency, or hell, 150, 75-man agency, don't have a large budget. That federal money is really good, and they're going to continue.
That's how they get their overtime and equipment and stuff. Their SWAT teams and yeah,
and equipment, exactly. And you got guys working on task force that get even more money back.
Yeah, and it's very interesting. Let's see. So with that, we know that the law is basically like. You know how they did sanctuary cities? It's almost similar to that. So it takes the Second Amendment law and it puts it under a protective umbrella where the federal government comes in and to take care of things. We also know that the ATF does not have enough people to go out and enforce this at all. So, and
right, that's why they need
the locals to help enforce it. And so, if the local jurisdiction don't enforce it, then you will be in a gun sanctuary state, basically. And so, when he say, okay, now we're going to enact a federal law against gun controls, those states are going to be looking at them like, you're not pulling that here. And the law even goes to where if they do try, the municipalities inside try to enforce it, the departments, they will be charged $50,000 per filing. So basically, it's going to put them out of business. They won't be able to.
Yeah.
So.
Oh, I can see that because I mean, it's big bank take little bank. They're going to make you comply to what they need to get done, and there's not much the local agencies and sheriffs or whatever can stand up and say it. Mostly going to be sheriffs because police chiefs work for the government. The highest elected official is their boss. The sheriff runs and is elected on his own accord. So you can see sheriffs standing up to the federal government, but a lot of police departments are going to cower in because there's not much they can do. They don't have a lot of wiggle room.
Yeah, it's crazy. And so with that, we're going to go ahead and wrap it up. And we're going to start talking about this episode is brought to you by Saber Team Tactical. And it's sponsored by them. We also do engraving training and tactical training from beginners all the way up to expert. We have classes. Our training schedule is out and ready to go. And just look us up. Al is our lead firearms instructor, and he's one of the best out there. So, yeah. And with that, we'll see you guys on the range.
See you on the range, guys.